In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. They promise it'll get better, but it usually gets worse. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data, so we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, and other industry scandals are designed to keep the money flowing. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing, so they do a virus scan and then wipe out our precious photos. Intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Marc Anthony Arena.
What's happening behind your back now, right in front of your eyes.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, overlooking the can of worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. My name is Marc Anthony Arena, and I am a real human being. Do you see how I just breathed right there? I have to inhale and exhale. And that's because I'm real and I'm not some kind of AI-generated voice. Unfortunately, we're going to have to note that in the future now that all these AI things are out there. I'm going to put a little badge on my next book with AI crossed out to say this book was authored by a real human being without any AI tools that make you lazy. This came from the heart. So, here I am, scratchy morning voice and all. It's me, I'm real, and I'm going to take pride in that. I did an ad a while back. It was meant for YouTube and Rumble and that sort of thing. And at one point I breathed in or I slipped or something, and I told the editor to leave it in. Because every other ad out there now, you'll notice almost every other ad out there is AI. It's for some scummy scam magic pills or something, and it'll say, you need to do this weird trick, one weird trick that your dentist doesn't want you to do for foot fungus, and on all that. You'll start to notice what's real and what's not. So it's at this point in time that our flaws actually come out to show that we're real. And isn't that ironic? So, this morning I want to tell you we are celebrating something pretty nice. I've told you before, I don't buy votes. I don't buy likes. I don't buy subscribers. All my listeners and subscribers are real human beings just like you. Viewers like you, as they say. So I'm proud to announce that we just surpassed 5,200 downloads. 5,285 is what it is this morning when I just checked. So thank you all for your continued support of this show. You are all real people, and as always, I appreciate you telling your friends about the show. Just awesome. And that number is since I started this Computer Exorcist podcast in the beginning of 2023. So the cool thing is I look at it month by month, and each month I'll get more people, right? So when I first looked at it, it was like, ooh, at this rate, right? I get X number of people in the first months of 2023, and I said to myself, ooh, at this rate, I'll get X number of people by next month. And it turned out I surpassed that, right? Because the show grew. I wasn't just getting that same amount the next month. I got more people the next month. And that's the case between last year and this year. At this rate, I'll have 4,000 downloads. Let's pretend I had 2,000 people last year, and I expected 4,000 people total. I expected another 2,000 this year. Well, I surpassed that. So that's pretty cool. Um, this is our 5,000th download celebration episode. Also want to say shout out to listener Rachel in Houston. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you love the show. And also want to say, here's what I've been up to. The last couple episodes, normally I'm behind on everything in life. I'm always behind and late for everything. But the last couple episodes, I'd say the last 5-6 episodes I recorded in August. I recorded ahead of time. I was like, wow, I'm ahead of time? What's this? And I just plopped them in the queue, and my red circle just debuted them when I told it to. And so I haven't really spoken on this show really in a month and a half. What have I been doing since then? Well, things were quiet in August and first half of September. And I was able to take a little time. Whenever I get some quiet time, it's okay, Mark, don't worry. People aren't abandoning you. People need you. Your people still love you, but a lot of times people are cooking for the holidays or whatever, and they don't need me. And also, my goal is that they don't need me again, right? Some of my clients have died off, so my condolences there. I mean, that just happens, right? But a lot of people just don't need me. So, okay, Mark, don't panic. People aren't abandoning you. Use this time for your advantage. Use this time to crawl out of the quicksand that is Rochester. Use this time to grow your business. So I got a brand new back deck. I recorded an episode back there before, so y'all know I got that. And it's just been so conducive to my productivity. It's incredible. I go out there and my mind is clear. I don't have all these cool distractions. I got a video game museum in my house, so I have so many cool distractions. So I go out on the deck, just me and my laptop. I'm working on my next book. What I did was one of my buddy's sister compiled a list for me of all the rec centers in New York State. And I called a bunch of them, and they were all suspicious and standoffish, and what are you trying to do? And a couple of them said, don't worry, we have a computer genius already who teaches us how to do virus scans and whatever. Okay, fine, they don't want me. And like you heard in the John Hansen episode recently, you know what Mark used to be excellent at doing? I used to be excellent at what he said, going around a room, and he said, you don't just want to give your resume to everybody. He said, just find the people who want you. I used to be excellent at wasting my time just to check off a list. Oh, I got to everybody. Okay, I did everybody, right? Diligence isn't always good. I was diligent I called everybody and I made sure, those people didn't want you. All right, so Mark, you know what we did? It was a move of maturity on my part. Okay, stop. Stop with the rec centers. They don't want you. Take the hint. All right, now I can spend my time with the people who want me. John said, focus on the people who care about you and want you. So I then had another friend do a couple of phone calls. John actually gave me a list of a bunch of nursing homes and independent living facilities. So I had another friend call those places and say, Mark is a tech talk expert. He explains tech in plain English, and he can talk to your independent living facility. And they were receptive. They were interested. But a lot of them didn't call me back. So, okay, Mark, table it for a while. Put it down for a while. Next thing I did is I went to Boston to see my relatives in August and walked into a library, and I gave them my business card, and they were standoffish. And I said, all right, well, it's only one library. I'll keep going. So I went to another library, and I met these librarians, Brenda and Diane, and shout out to you ladies if you're listening. And I forgot to say I was an author at first. I walked in and I said, hey, I give tech talks in plain English, and I explain technology and what's being done to us in plain English. And they were thrilled, and they loved hearing my advice. And I said, here's the concepts I do. I make it so that you don't need a new computer for 10, 15 years. As long as you turn off update attacks, your machine is stable. You don't have to keep buying a new one every year. You don't waste your money and destroy the environment, right? And they said, wow, that's pretty cool. And I gave them advice about printers and routers. And they said, that's great. And then eventually I let it out that I was an author too and a podcaster. And they said, oh, you need to give an author talk. And it all clicked into place. I said, really? And they said, yeah, we've got a room here, or here, talk to our directors. And Then they gave me a pamphlet. And that pamphlet had a list of every library in the area. And they said, call the libraries and say you want to give an author talk. And that key word, it made sense to the libraries. Instead of me humming and hawing and cap in hand, as my guy Alan would say, I wasn't calling up, hey, would you do me a favor? I hum and haw and I give talks. It's, hey, I'm an author. I'd like to know how to go about giving an author talk. And she said, call the libraries, see if they want you. They were all receptive. They were all friendly. They were all, and it's prophet is unwelcome in his own town, right? When I called places in Rochester and New York State, it's, you're not Dave Matthews of the Buffalo Bills. Go away. We don't like you. But in non-Rochester, people actually care about saving money and saving the environment. So apparently, all the libraries were receptive. A bunch of them scheduled me right away. So in December, if you're in the Boston area, I will be giving talks at libraries in December, and I'm so thrilled because that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. I love helping people. I love being in people's living rooms and cleaning up their technology and turning off all the idiocy and stupidity that comes from the manufacturers. I like hot rodding people's laptops. I like teaching people about scams and how to avoid them, but I'm sick of doing it for 2 or 3 people a day. I want to help more people. I'm sick of making just enough for a bachelor to survive. I want to help more people. I want to be more effective. I want to make more money by helping people, right? Everyone else out there is trying to make more money by squeezing people harder. Turns out people are thrilled to pay you if you help them. So that's what I've been up to. I'm so thrilled and looking forward to starting the new leg of my career. I told you in the beginning of this year, in the beginning of 24, I went to Chicago and gave a speech. And that was just the beginning. That was practice. And I knew that was just the first step. And it would get me used to this lifestyle. And I'm so thrilled. Okay. Y'all want to do some articles, huh? Got some really interesting ones that have been in the briefcase for a while. Let's see how many we can get through. This one I believe this came from my buddy Uncle Lush, who he was a guest on the show a couple of years back on the bonus show, and I'll get him on again. So, privacy advocates demand more information on New York's Excelsior Pass. This is WGRZ, April 2021, and thank God this did not come to pass. Last week, New York State announced the Excelsior Pass, which will act as a badge to gain entry to concerts and sporting events and theaters for those vaccinated. Privacy advocates are demanding more information over who has access to the data and whether or not local police or federal agencies can see who is vaccinated. There are also concerns over digital segregation that this could cause. Thank you. That's correct. That is. And again, nobody should know, right? It's always these political things who are like, well, this is this and this is that, and it's political, and it's, I don't want protected this and that, and no, well, hang on, nobody should know. The privacy policy is one of the worst I've ever seen, according to Albert Fox Kahn of Surveillance Technology Oversight Project. I gotta connect with him. Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, or STOP. IBM and the governor have given us buzzwords like blockchain and anonymization, but they haven't actually given us technical details, right? Well, it's because the governor has no clue what any of this means. The New York State government uses ancient, rotten Windows 95 style technology with zero security, right? And apparently they've contracted IBM for this and probably gave them millions, and then the whole thing fell apart and whatever. So IBM probably walked away with millions of our dollars, and that was it. So look, the real reason is microcontrol. It was just an excuse to microcontrol us, and I've invented that term to describe what Silicon Valley is doing. It's all about microcontrol. They don't want to just control where you are in a large sense. They want to control and monitor where you are at all times, at every given moment, at every second of the day. So my hashtag there is Cuomo gropes us all. So, as another extension of this tentacle, they also did the Easy Pass thing, where during COVID they ripped out all the toll booths. They used COVID as an excuse. And I called the toll booth lady and she said, well, It's because I called because I had a problem and I felt like there was no recourse. I couldn't dispute one of the tolls. And she said, well, the toll booth workers were dying. They were all getting run over by cars. I don't know about you, but I have never heard of an incident where a toll booth worker died. Okay, I don't know about you. Maybe it's happened. I don't know. But they were using it as an excuse, and they told the toll booth workers that's why they were getting rid of them. That was the punchline or the party line. So that was their excuse. And look, the whole thing is you can't just, now wherever you go on the thruway, they know where you are. And they also reserve the right. They've done this in New Jersey for 20 years now. They've done this in New Jersey. And New York will eventually do this, I can almost guarantee, because everything about New York is about worsening and tightening their grip on us. But they can tell where you are at any given time. What does that mean? If you know I'm in Rochester at 12 o'clock and I'm in Syracuse at 1 or 2 o'clock or what have you, you know how fast it took me to get there, don't you? That's simple elementary school word problems. So eventually they'll start attacking you based on how fast you got places because they now know that. The other funny thing is that I have clients who have antique plates, and somehow, through some fluke in the state, they have the same license plate number as somebody else in the state. So now that other person drives through toll booths, and my friend gets the bill. So that was kind of funny. He was telling me about it. So just something to think about. Luckily, the Excelsior Pass fell apart and dried up, but that's the thing. If it were up to them, they would keep it going. And even though COVID is no longer a relevant issue, they would still use it for other things. Well, maybe you're going to get viruses in your computer, and maybe you're contagious to something else, so we need this. It's for your protection. So we're going to give thanks that fell apart, because luckily New York State is both evil but also incompetent. So that's very fortunate for humanity. All right, here's an interesting one. There was, you ever think to yourself, the other thing about humanity is that they're unoriginal, right? I talked about this in a past episode where computer guys just, go with the big name, go with Google or GoDaddy, right? And what happens is they end up fueling a monopoly. They fuel a company that just they're getting, it's not that they're forcing anyone, but they're just the big name, so they're just getting everyone. And people are so short-sighted, they just think, that's just the way it is, and you can't go anywhere else. Google is the internet. I've heard a lot of people, doesn't Google own the internet? Well, figuratively, but no, they don't. Okay, we can survive without Google. We survived before them and will survive after them. So the point is, human beings, especially computer guys, are unoriginal. Okay? They're unoriginal, and they have no brains, and they just, I'll just go with whatever knee-jerk reaction. And that's how we got into this mess, this stew of inbred monopolies. It's the same thing with manufacturing. I am an alum at a certain school, and I go there, and I am an alumnus judge, and there are these business plan competitions, and I go there, and a lot of them say, well, naturally, we'll just manufacture it in China and sell it on Amazon. And I say, everyone says that, but why don't you look into alternatives that are more cost effective, more ethical, more whatever. And look, I don't care who you are or what you do, but if you focus on any one given thing and you just give them the contract without bothering to research alternatives, then they are eventually going to become spoiled, right? Oh, we're just going to go with that, right? We're just going to give it to them. And so the whole thing is with manufacturing, right? I'm a fan of everything diversity. Manufacturing diversity being a term I just invented just now this morning. And the point is, you don't have to knee-jerk reaction, we'll make it in China and we'll sell it on Amazon. There are other places you can make things. There are other places you can sell things. Okay? And look, I've bought things directly from Chinese factories before, and I have a great relationship with a couple of these folks. And they're wonderful, and I remember buying a Bluetooth speaker from one of them and reviewing it and being so impressed. It was two different Bluetooth speakers. I was so impressed with the quality. And I gave them a very detailed review of that and how I was proud of them that they improved their quality and so on. So look, I'm not against China, okay, is what I'm saying. I've got great relationships. One guy, I bought a couple items from him, and then we just kept in touch, and he sent me an email for the holidays, and just, hey, I hope you're well. It was just that simple. He's just a nice guy. And then later on, a couple years later, it's, hey, Mark, you know what? I got this thing here. You want these things? Hey, okay, great. You keep a good relationship with people. But I was a huge fan of LG smartphones. I had an HTC, which was Taiwanese, and then I had an LG phone, which was Korean. And just a huge, huge fan, right? Because they're alternatives to the big brands, and I just loved them. And unfortunately, LG said, hey, we're a huge company. We have great brand recognition. Therefore, we're just going to curl up and die and give up on our smartphone business. And that was very sad. They should have sold the business or something. So that was quite sad. But anyway, I've got an article here from Mobility. And it says, non-Chinese smartphones and phones not made in China, the super guide. Yesterday, a friend buzzed me, and he was shopping for a new smartphone and wanted me to recommend him one. He didn't want a device from a Chinese brand. So I will reproduce a small chunk of our conversation here for context. Bro, you are the master of this game, that's why I want to ask you. Please recommend a phone between thus and such dollars with $240 and $250, that's a funny range, with good battery life. And there you go. He didn't want the generic brands, and he was tired of charging his phone all the time. So I did a quick audit. Having eliminated certain brands, I was left to pick up a phone for him between Apple, Nokia, and Samsung. Some will ask, what of Motorola? Motorola used to be an American brand, but now belongs to Lenovo. Motorola was sold to Google, and then Google sold them to Lenovo. So there's that. And I'm a huge fan of Lenovo computers. Motorola phones, I owned, the past two phones I had were Motorola, and they were okay. They were fairly free of bloatware, because technically they were going by the Google style of free of bloatware. But man, just a low quality, just a low quality materials. Okay, the battery was so. The camera was pretty bad. It wasn't the worst I've had, but it was pretty bad. It wasn't horribly slow, but it was sluggish. I mean, just the phone calls, right? These two phones, the two Motorola's I got, were given to me from my dad, and with him they would drop the call constantly. When I brought the phone to T-Mobile network, it was a little better, but just, you can't hear the person and blah, blah, blah. And the texting was awful. You could never send a picture correctly, or it would send it all garbled. And it's like, hello, folks. You have billions and trillions of AI features, but you can't do the simple stuff correctly. Remember my book. Remember how this industry is playing Jenga. They love adding trillions of features, but making something simple like texting someone a photo, making that reliable was just, why would we do that? So constantly I had problems texting people. It was just low quality, right? In this industry, I always say, usually it's like Samsung and Apple have high quality physical materials, but they have evil treachery, evil intentions where the product is designed to stop working, right? We've come so far with build quality, and they don't want that to get in the way of their recurring sales. So they design it to die. But anyway, the Motorola was just lousy. Okay, fine. So, years ago, most mobile phones were European. Nokia, Siemens, Ericsson, Alcatel. While there were brands from elsewhere, it was Europe that dictated the trends and numbers. I personally had a Kyocera smartphone, was my first smartphone back around 2002. And it was a Palm Pilot plus a phone. It was manufactured by Kyocera, and it was beautiful and wonderful and everything you could ever want in a phone. But I dropped it in a puddle of water, and the contacts roasted, and that was the end of that. But just a beautiful phone. I probably could have cleaned the contacts. I didn't think of that. Probably could have just polished the metal contacts on the bottom. So that was the end of that. But for years after that, I carried a Palm Pilot in one pocket and a smartphone in the other. I mean, a flip phone in the other. But things soon began to change, and today we're at a point where European smartphone brands are an endangered species. As a matter of fact, some of the smartphones in the world today are made in China. Nokia is the last major European brand standing. By the way, Microsoft bought them and destroyed them, and I think they spun them off later on. But everything Microsoft does goes to pot. They bought them, and Bill Gates was the cat eating the canary, and he bought Nokia, and at the time they were a huge maker of flip phones, and he bought them and he infected them with the Microsoft smartphone operating system, the Windows Phone 8, and absolutely destroyed them. 7 people bought them. Whole thing fell apart. So he sold them, and now they're just a destroyed chunk of what they used to be. Flaming embers. They have like one Android phone now. So thank you, Microsoft, for contributing to the downfall of the European phone market. There are other... Nokia is the last major brand standing. There are other smaller brands in operation all over the EU. That's nice. Samsung and LG are Korean, and Apple and Google are American. So after Google dumped Motorola or sold them, they now design their own phones in-house. They have the manpower and the money to do that. But chances are they have them manufactured by some contract manufacturer. Okay. What phones are not made in China today? So Apple phone is an American brand, but they make the models in China. During COVID, they did say they were going to assemble them in America and India and some places. We did an episode on that back then. So it goes on. What phones are not made in China today? The big question is, are there any current cell phones not made in China today? If they exist, which ones are they and where are they made? Note that if you were hunting for smartphones not made in China, you're going to search hard and long. But yes, cell phones that are not made in China exist. In October of 19, Samsung closed its last factory in China, though later it outsourced production to a handful of Chinese manufacturers. Sony also closed its China factory months earlier. Some Apple phones are also no longer made in China. Okay, great. And that was 2019. So later on, after COVID, a lot of companies moved out of there and made them elsewhere. TP-Link, which is my favorite brand of router, left China and went to Vietnam. So that's cool. Look, I mean, folks, no matter what it is, right? Again, nothing against China, right? But spread the wealth, right? Like yesterday, I assembled a footstool for my dad. He and my mom ordered it online from somewhere, and I looked at it and said, made in Malaysia. Okay, cool. And it said, no flame retardant chemicals. Cool. All right, we got enough chemicals here. So, there's a trade-off, because it might avoid a fire if you're a smoking lady and burn down your house or something, but... Lord knows I live next to a lot of smoking ladies, but yeah, we just, there's enough chemicals in the world. So I assembled it, and it was awful design. It was very awful assembly instructions. It was awful. But once I got it together, it was very solid, and it's a nice little footstool. It looks good and it's comfortable. So I was like, cool, they're making things elsewhere now, right? The rest of the world has to eat too. Again, knee-jerk reactions. Just stop and think for a second. Hey, maybe we can make this elsewhere. Other people, everyone deserves your attention. Let's see. And there is Asus, which has production facilities in Taiwan. Lastly, LG makes its phones in South Korea. And again, sorry, LG, they pulled out because they were one of the last bastions of good phones, right? And y'all know, I mean, Samsung is Korean as well, but y'all know how massively evil and deceptive and treacherous Samsung is. I would much rather buy a Chinese phone of any brand, including Huawei, which was notorious for spying on people. I would much rather have a Huawei than a Samsung. Samsung has unremovable spyware. Okay? They make good hardware. And actually, a buddy of mine will erase Samsung phones and put custom, I think it's either, let's see here, it's either Sailfish or the other one. Lineage OS. So that's cool. If you have Samsung hardware, that's fine. Just erase it and put a custom firmware on there. Which cell phones are not made in China? Number 1, Samsung, Vietnam, India, and South Korea. Okay. Sony, Japan. And that's great. Sony makes a lot of expensive Android phones. They used to team up with Ericsson, and they used to make a lot of Palm phones as well with their Sony Clie division, right? But they got on the Android bandwagon instead of saying, hey, we're Sony, we're big, we can come up with our own thing, right? But anyway, yeah, my brother and I always look at Sony phones. A lot of them are in Japan, some of them are in Europe. Very few of them make it here, and it's sad, right? Maybe they know that American buyers are looking for the price-conscious brands, and they wouldn't shell out for a nice phone. But look, all these folks, these old folks who are on Social Security are shelling out $1,000 and $1,500 and $1,200 for these stupid Apple iPhones because some scumbag at the store told them to. So look, Sony, people can afford expensive phones. Bring it here. Bring it here and compete and show people what a good quality phone is, so people don't have to resort to Apple for the expensive phones, right? Please, I'm sick of these Apple phones. Asus Taiwan, LG India and Brazil, and update LGC's production. Purism, the Librem 5 USA by Purism is manufactured in the United States of America. They are worth looking into. Xiaomi, some units are made in India for local consumption. Motorola, similar to Xiaomi, Motorola's inventory is sometimes manufactured in India. Apple iPhone. Most iPhones are in China, some are produced in India, and again, they announced that they might make some here. LG, Motorola, and Samsung also have plants in Brazil, but that keeps reducing and may be brought to a halt. So actually, I'd be curious to know, post-COVID, they might have brought more production to Brazil. Again, Brazil, Mexico, Malaysia, Vietnam. These are just some. Volkswagen actually makes engines in Hungary, so there's places out there, folks. There's places out there. I have a buddy in Bangladesh, and I was talking to him about making some circuit boards there, and it's possible, right? Maybe a couple bucks more, right? I was talking to my cousin about his new job yesterday, and he said we're working with this vendor, and we said we'd rather work with you even if it's a couple bucks more. Sometimes it's worth it to pay a couple bucks more for anything in life, okay? Mobile phone brands in the USA. There are scores of mobile phone brands here. Apple, Samsung, Motorola, Nokia, OnePlus. All right, I've seen OnePlus before. BLU, CAT, TCL, and Alcatel. But none of their phones are made in the US. Most of them are China, but also Vietnam, India, and other Asian countries. Cool. Is there an American-made cell phone? A number of cell phones and smartphone brands used to manufacture their products in the USA. These include Motorola, and they used to have a manufacturing facility in Fort Worth, Texas. However, all manufacturing of smartphone brands, except for ones, happens outside the U.S. Okay. Librem has announced a U.S. version of security-focused smartphone. It's made in the USA with a U.S.-based supply chain. I have another buddy who works in electronics, and he said that if you have to sell something to the military or the government here, you have to be completely aware of your supply chain. You have to have documentation from each of your vendors of where the products came from. So that's kind of cool. It's like, all right, we know this circuit board was assembled in America. It's assembled with parts that were bought from an American supplier. Those parts were manufactured by another American factory. Those materials, those raw materials, the metals and the powders and all that, and the carbon, those were sourced from an American mine, right? So it's all documented. And it looks like that's what Librem is doing here. This is the only known smartphone manufacturer in the U.S. Okay, great. Are there any smartphones in Europe? Gigaset is a mobile phone brand that manufactures in Germany. Okay, great. There are over 100 non-Chinese smartphones right now. The problem is that most of these are very small players and command a very tiny market share even when combined together. Again, that's due to pea-brained computer guys and pea-brained computer guys at the cell phone carriers, right? Oh, we're only going to do these because these are value brands. Hello, you know what? People out there have money and they want something else. They're okay with alternative brands, okay? People are shocked to know when I tell them that there's more than just Apple and Samsung. I'll tell people, look, don't buy Apple. And they go, well, I don't like Samsung. Or I'll say, don't buy Samsung. Well, I don't like Apple. Hello, people. It's scary that most people think that Apple and Samsung are the only brands out there. I say, look, there are billions of other brands out there. Okay? So, there are over 100 non-Chinese smartphone brands. Again, thanks to people out there who don't understand that there are other brands, please raise awareness. There are billions of other brands, all of which are better than Apple and Samsung. Okay, here goes. Apple, Samsung, Nokia, which is Finnish, by the way, from Finland. I always thought they were Japanese growing up, but they're Finnish. Nokia is a city in Finland. Google, Sony, LG, BLU, Lava, which is Indian. Sharp is Japanese. Don't forget about Sharp. They used to make excellent TVs. They were the first to make LCD televisions. And of course, they gave up. Fairphone, which is Dutch. Philips Mobile, which is Dutch. That's cool. Yotaphone, which is Russian. BQ is Spanish. Acer and Asus and HTC are Taiwanese, but HTC, I believe, fell apart. Essential Products, American, fell apart. And number 18 is Nothing-British. So I don't know if this was a brand called Nothing Phones that was British, or if it's a joke. Nothing British. Nothing was made in British. Hang on, folks. We're going to pull up the internet here and find out. Nothing Mobile British UK. Nothing Mobile UK. Yeah, nothing.tech. Ha! Look at that. Nothing.tech. Yeah, Phone 2A Plus. Yeah, so it's actually a brand. Oh, look, US beta program. So they're coming to the US. Thank you, please. Thank you. Again, here's the problem, right? You can buy a phone online from Europe and bring it and have it shipped to America, and you can plug your SIM card into there, which is cool. Heaven forbid you do an eSIM. That's a centralized control scandal where they approve who you plug into. But the real progress will only be made, right? You're only going to have a handful of nerds and a handful of my listeners go out and buy smartphones from elsewhere. The vast majority of phones are going to be sold at the cell phone carrier location. And even I buy phones at the cell phone carrier because I want to make sure that they're compatible with Wi-Fi calling and everything. So, look, this Nothing tech, they're coming to the US. That's awesome. But that's cool. But it's not going to go anywhere unless they get their foot in the door at the actual carriers, at T-Mobile and AT&T and so on. Community edition, industry first co-creation project empowering our community to build a smartphone of their own imagination. Look at that. We bring everything to life. So they're letting people submit ideas. That's cool. So good for you, Nothing Tech. I applaud you greatly. That's beautiful. Again, I thought it was a joke, but no, that's a real thing. Nothing. All right, Cherry Mobile, which is from Philippines. Docomo, which is Japanese. I've heard that brand for a while. Panasonic, Japanese. Afrione, which is Nigerian. Maraphone, which is Rwandan. And again, Librem, which is American. That's cool, Maraphone. And I did a little research on the Maraphone. It was started by an Indian guy in Rwanda. And I applaud them so much. Because, look, I'm going to be frank here. Rwanda is known for their war back in the 90s. That's what they're known for. And thanks to this Maraphone, right, that they could be known for something positive. I applaud them so much. I think that's beautiful. I know recently one of the factories for Maraphone was in South Africa and they closed, but I believe they still have other factories in Rwanda. So I applaud them. Look, they're making a phone, even if it's just for African consumption. That's where to start, right? It's a huge, huge smartphone market in Africa because they did a leapfrog. They use computers, but most people just have a smartphone. They didn't get computers as much as we did. They didn't get as many of them, right? So they went right to smartphones. Same thing with Poland with landlines. They went directly to smartphones. Okay. And Sony Ericsson. Guess who bought out the partnership? Sony bought it out. Okay, great. China has a huge army of Droid phones that are taking over the world. And at the present rate, all smartphones might eventually be Chinese just one day. And by the way, I got a recommendation, but I'm not telling you what I recommended to my friend. Okay. Let's see, a couple of notes at the bottom. That's about it. So that's it for that article. That was awfully fascinating, right? Again, folks, the point is, look at alternatives. Finally, I'm going to close out. Thanks to Uncle Lush for this. He sent me something called the Live Cyber Threat Map, and that can be found at Threat Cloud. And I'm actually going to look this up here to give you an address for that. Threat Cloud. So it's threatmap.checkpoint.com. Look that up, threatmap.checkpoint.com. It doesn't give exact specifics, but it's a very cool animation. It's a very cool real-time live animation. It gives you visuals of cyber threats that are happening right now, from where to where. So there's little lines coming out from the U.S. to the Netherlands right now. I'm looking at it right now. And there's lines right now going from Turkey back to itself. And there's lines from India back to itself. So it's showing you where cyber attacks are coming from. I don't know how they can detect them so certainly of, okay, this is a cyber attack. Oop, there's one from Australia to the United States. Oop, there's one from U.S. to Switzerland. Oop, there's one from Switzerland to somewhere in Eastern Europe. Okay, look at that. Wow. So threatmap.checkpoint.com. Check it out. It doesn't give specifics, but it's a very cool visual. And so you're not going to learn anything specific, but I'll tell you what. A buddy of mine who works in the cybersecurity industry told me, he said, Mark, when at the beginning of the Ukrainian war, all of a sudden the boards lit up, as they say. The boards lit up, and he saw all sorts of lines flying around. I don't know if he was looking at this particular threat map, but I'm sure all cybersecurity guys have some kind of a map. And he was looking it up, and he said the boards were lighting up, and Russia and Ukraine were antagonizing each other in cyberspace, electronically, first, in the calm before the storm. So he said the boards were lighting up. So if there's some kind of election or war, check out that threat map. I'm going to leave you with that. Had a lot to talk about today. So thank you so much for joining me. And we are celebrating 5,000 downloads. And we pray for everyone involved in the war in Ukraine and for an end to that conflict. They're all brothers and sisters over there, and they're also intertwined. I mean, a lot of people I know identify themselves as Russian Ukrainian, right? They're so intertwined, just like the U.S. here, right? We all have relatives down south and up north and out west and back east. So we pray for an end to that conflict and all other wars. My name is Mark Anthony Arena. You can find out more about me at thecomputerexorcist.com. If you want to do this for a living, if you're sick of working in your day job for some fake cubicle job, then why don't you go to becomeanexorcist.com and find out how you can learn from me. I got a lot of free material out there that can get you started, and you can make money right away without paying me anything. And then you just consult with me on the hard stuff that you need help with. Or don't. Take my free material and then go online and do your research for the hard stuff. You don't have to pay me anything. I want people out there helping people. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you next week.